Hi, my name is Jack Adamus, and for my final project I looked at placing a cost on subsistence. Now first of all, the reason why I feel like we do need a cost on subsistence, as you see in the question, is that there are a lot of pressures on subsistence. There's climate change coming up, there's social pressures, there's political pressures on the threat to subsistence. And in court, they can put a price on human life, and it does work. And I think with the subsistence, you would also need that for court cases. So let's take a look, and we'll see what we did for my final presentation. I'll just give you a little project outline first. So I first looked into previous studies, and this was looking at the price of subsistence as well as human life. I then looked into an exploratory analysis on the relationship between human life and subsistence. Thirdly, I then tried to capture and place a price on subsistence, followed by a discussion. So taking a look at previous cost studies. The first one that I took a look at is a discount rate for total earnings, and this was for the price of a life. This was done back in 1967. Rice utilized a discount rate of 10%, and assuming that there is about 50 years in a person's total earnings. If you have, for example, an average wage of $50,000, then today you are worth roughly $500,000 using this model. Next, Leonard took a look into willingness to pay. If you're not familiar with willingness to pay, it's simply what it means, willingness to pay. It can be anything. For example, pencil. What are you willing to pay for a pencil? For me, it'll be maybe about $1. For my life, it's going to be substantially more. Leonard did not give a explicit cost on his. He was just more or less looking into the philosophy of that. More interesting was Viscusi. He also did a willingness to pay, but instead of doing just a generic price willing to pay for your life, he's actually looking at a small chance, eliminating a small chance of death. And that was roughly about $200 to $1,000 that people would be willing to pay to eliminate a 1 in 10,000th chance of dying. Stanford economists looked at the quality of life. So for example, what's the quality of life would be if you become paralyzed or ill or something. To them, they think it's worth about $137,000. Reinhard Krikorian in 1999 looked at the value of subsistence, and this was just the explicit value of the final goods and services derived from subsistence. So for example, a leg of a moose. And this was valued anywhere from $16,000 to almost $50,000 per year. So the big question is, I have all these studies here showing how can we relate these to subsistence. There's only one that's related to subsistence, but that's more just the explicit cost of it, not so much the intrinsic value. There's something more to than just the leg of the moose, right? We've been discussing this throughout the semester. So let's take a look. What I then attempted to do is take a look at the relationship between subsistence and life. And so I first started to create 3 perimeters. First, it's more than just a quote-unquote quality of life. A sport hunter could lose his rights to sport hunt and say his quality of life is went down the tube. Right? But we want to eliminate that. It's more than that. It's more than just the value of a final product, like I was just talking about. But it's not the value of just a life alone. And what I'm thinking is that we could use Viscusi's model, and we could try to attempt to link subsistence with a small chance of death. Again, people were willing to pay between $200 and $1,000 to eliminate a 1 in 10,000 chance of dying. So looking in and trying to create this relationship between subsistence and life and a small chance of death, the first thing I looked into is the Exxon Valdez oil spill. And this devastated the local region. Palinkas in 93 found that the consequences between the natives was increased rates of depression, anxiety, and PTSD, especially with women. Pico and Martin in '07 found a long-term threat to communities, the culture, and self-identity from the oil spill. Okay, so very interesting. I have not gotten yet to death, and especially what I did is I actually focused on suicide. And so then you'll see the next slide here. I started to try to make a link between suicide and subsistence. And so looking at some other studies to tie with that, Wexler found that colonialism was linked with forced schooling, political domination, and more. But even more than that, Wexler later on in 2008 found that drugs, stress, difficulties, financial issues, everything there was linked to suicide. Um, and in the big picture, Wexler did link colonialism with suicide. In '96, Hensel looked at the transition from subsistence to a cash economy and how difficult that is. He also looked at the gender role issues and didn't explicitly link suicide to all this, but definitely hinted towards it. Bell in 2010 looked at the climate change and how that leads to stress, loss, self-identity, etc. And so after all of this research that I looked into, I started to really try to hone in and create a big picture. And I did. I created essentially right here what you see, a big picture. And you see the big circle here, the biggest one, the external drivers. This is each one of these, the bigger the bubble it is, kind of the less control an individual has, right? So for example, external drivers, like the slide before was saying, can link to suicide as colonialism, perhaps maybe climate change, government policy, etc. Right? And so colonialism, for example, leaks into local drivers. So that could be school pressure, social, parents, it could be economy, it could be the cash economy, subsistence economy, religion, traditions, etc. And this local drivers will then kind of leak into individual drivers. So perhaps an individual leads to depression, alcohol, drugs, etc. And of course, that small bubble there is the ultimate loss. And that's kind of the centerpiece of kind of what I'm trying to focus on. More importantly, again, back to kind of the big picture of my research, or I should actually say the focus of my research, is subsistence. And yes, I do firmly believe that subsistence is a small chance of leading to suicide. So we can use Viscusi's model here. And again, his assumptions are that there's a 100% chance of dying with the cost of someone willing to pay between $200 and $1,000 for that to eliminate that one chance. Okay? And so you look here on the way left column here, I got day, month, and year. So the way I could do is an individual doesn't need to subsistence hunt or gather 365 days a year, right? That's the extreme. But if they do it 0, they're not going to be happy, right? If they do 180, they might be just as happy as if they did 365. I don't know. So I created this range. And I just did day, month, year. And so if you look at the day, if they do every day, they'd be willing to pay between um, if they're willing to pay between $200 a day, right, to go subsistence hunting. They'd pay either 73,000 for the year, or they'd be paying 723,000 for their entire life. So that'd be essentially the low end of the cost if someone wants to subsistence hunt every day. The high end of that, paying $1,000 to go subsistence hunting every day, would be to be between 365,000 and for their life, and this is a 10% discount rate with a 50-year life, would be 3.6 million. Now you can look at the other ones for the month. Once a month if someone wanted to go, so that'd be 12 times a year. The total life would be between 23,000 and 118,000 for the cost of subsistence, and the year would be just once a year. So one person going out just once a year would be between 2,000 and close to 10. Now this is really theoretical. I understand that. This model does have major flaws, but I think it's not so much the price why I looked into this as kind of just a good start to this complex relationship between human life and subsistence. Essentially, ultimately, how important is subsistence, right? I'm an economist. I can't really believe that everything is priceless. In the perfect world, yes. But what I do believe is that further research on this topic could spur more insightful debates and theories than what I have thus presented so far. And again, I think this is or could be really important for implications in litigation, legal debates, court cases, etc. So anyways, that is the end of my research that I did. I hope you find it interesting, and please feel free to comment, good or bad.